Okay, so just to start us off nice and gently, standing comfortably and just rubbing your hands together. Fingers a little bit warm, and then tapping gently over your face. And working up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. This little exercise is a useful one to physically warm up, to get the blood and the energy flowing through the tissues down the inside of your arm and up the outside. It's also a good way of beginning a key process in Tai Chi, drawing your attention into your body, just noticing the vibration in your muscles and your fingers. On the other side, and the arm. Onto your back, just as much of your back as you can comfortably get to. Going around your hips. And work down the outside of your legs. Come up the inside. As you come up the front of your body, quite gently on your belly, and then the upper part of your chest. So, standing with your feet directly below your hips, not too close together, pointing forward as much as you're comfortable with that, and just turning gently in this central part of your body, your hips, your waist. Quite a small movement to begin with, let the movement build gradually. And as with the previous exercise, it's not just a matter of the physicality of the movement, important though that is excuse me, it's not just the physical aspects, but it's also how the movement, the awareness of posture draws our thoughts in. We get this feeling of just a gathering of our attention, a quietening, a calming of our attention. And through that, an increased awareness of movement, posture, not just outside the body, not just the movements of our arms and our hips and so on, but subtle changes within the body, becoming more familiar with what we might think of as the inner landscape of the body. Patterns of movement, patterns of expansion and contraction. So we have three intertwining elements here. We have the physical aspect of the art, where our movements, our postures, and the changes that come about when we start to do these practices. We have aspects of mind, just simple awareness, the gathering of awareness, but increasingly also a deliberate intentionality coming into the movement, affecting the movement. And finally, the movement itself, the flow, the energy, the momentum, however we care to think of this. And really, we try not to think of those as being totally separate. The movement attracts our attention, our intention can affect our posture, which affects the movement, and these things are very much intertwined. Go very gently as you change your posture, whether you've done this before or not, and particularly people more experienced with this, use these opening movements to get a sense of how your body is at the moment. Don't make an assumption that because last time you did this, you could do it in a certain way, or you could drop your hips more, or whatever. But the same is going to apply today. Try and have a sense for where you actually are at the moment. And there's many different factors that can affect that. But we want to try and have our weight a little bit forwards and to just allow our hips to settle back, so there's a slight curve in the knees. This is not meant to be a deep posture. But even so, it's important to recognise the effect this has on our legs in particular. So a strong posture, as the muscles of our legs condition, then that helps to take strain off joints of the legs, particularly our knees. And as our hips are supported more, we get a freer movement. And one of the ways that we want to look at what we're doing here is trying to create circumstances, trying to affect both our, if you like, our inner and our outer posture, or our inner landscape, to a point where we're not fighting against our own body to move. So the movement becomes more fluid, more flowing. And your overall posture is a really significant part of that. We want to bring ourselves in line with the pull of gravity. If I stand like this, then if I try to release tightness in the body, I'm just going to fall over. So it's hard to release that tightness. It's hard to remove those obstructions to movement if I'm fighting against the pull of gravity, for instance. If we're going to align ourselves with the pull of gravity, an awareness of gravity, we live with gravity all of our lives, and yet we rarely consider it. Tai Chi began its life as a martial art, and as a martial art, it tries not to meet force with force, but rather works with that force in the same way that maybe a sailor sailing a boat would adjust the sails of the boat to work with the winds rather than be blown over by. And this requires awareness. You may find that the movement gently, quite organically increases in range. That's a natural response, but you shouldn't be forced in that. And now, raise your arms a little bit. Notice that my elbows are hanging below my hands. Try not to strain in your back or your shoulders. And let your hands drop down. Put one foot in front. Keep the width of your step, and with a gentle push, begin to move your weight from one foot to another. Again, people with a little bit more experience, we can redefine what's happening. We start off with an awareness that we're pushing our weight, but after a while we can start to feel this sort of springiness in the legs, so it feels less like a push, more like a bounce, in fact. Don't go too far, don't let your knees overextend, and just try and get a sense of the movement of your whole body, from the soles of your foot, from that point of contact with the ground, right up into the crown of your head and down into your fingers. So that gathered awareness that I referred to right at the start of the session begins to be reflected in a gathered body, a body that moves as one unit rather than having this slightly kind of disjointed feeling that there's a leg down there and an arm up here, and that somehow they're working against each other. And then with the other foot forwards. These are ongoing processes in Tai Chi. Try not to think of any of these things really as stages that we reach, and then having done them, we can say, oh, I've done that, and can now move on to something else. But rather, like breathing itself, ongoing processes that we're constantly seeking to refine and shake out. Excuse me when I get a drink. So, looking for a posture that as closely as possible brings us into line with the pull of gravity, recognizing that actually this again is an ongoing process and requires excuse me, sorry about the cough. This requires changes physically in our body quite often. We often have habits that have, for one reason or another, have developed that mean that we're not in line with the pull of gravity. We need to give the body time to recondition, to adapt to the change in circumstances. So might not always feel comfortable. Be careful with this as you develop it. We learn to work with a certain amount of discomfort, but beyond a certain point, that can become quite negative, and we simply find ourselves straining. So if you need to rest at any point, then obviously do so, or maybe just, if your legs are tightening up, give them a little shake or something like that. So in this basic posture, again, I come a little bit closer. I want to try and have my weight forward, and I'm exaggerating this significantly. It's really just a slight movement, but either way, we start to feel as though we're being pulled forwards, and we allow our hips to drop back to level off the pelvis and bring us back to an upright position. Shoulders in line with our hips. And a feeling in lower back, hips and buttocks, slightly overhanging, almost as though you're sitting on a fence or on a gate. Do apologise for the cough, I don't know where it's come from. So you can feel a slight pull in this lower part of your body at the back, and just allow yourself to drop down a little bit more. Be careful, don't over bend the knees, and don't push the knees forwards. So there's a limit to how far we can go down, and then we feel ourselves being pushed up. Then gravity takes over, so we have a two-way movement. Gravity pulling us down, and that springy resilience in our legs pushing us up. This is a process called rooting down. And we can think of, again, apologies, think of three aspects to this. One is the physical drop-in of our centre of gravity. And the lower our centre of gravity, the more stable we will be. Another is the cycle of movement, downwards and upwards, starting to feel this sense of movement, of energy rising up through the body and draining away again. The third aspect is that in going downwards, we bring not just the body but our mind downwards, so it begins to just increase the sense of gathering, of stillness, calmness in the mind. And so it's a key process at the center. It's a key process at the center of this art. I'm hoping the cough will just go away in a few moments, by the way. Look. Try and let the movement settle into a nice steady rhythm so that this underlying movement, this underlying flow, begins to permeate all the other movements in your body. Movements of muscles, things like circulation and breathing. Bringing a sense of smoothness, of harmony to the whole body. Bringing your hands around this time, so you're cradling the ball. Pushing up, turning your hands, sinking down. Keeping as much as possible an awareness of the movement, the changes within your body. We can do this directly, maybe bring a sense of intention to the practice, a deliberate straightening of the legs, deliberate change in the muscles of the back, and the patterns of movement in the body. We might use imagery, lifting and pressing down the ball, moving through water. People with more experience in these exercises, calling on the memory of doing these movements before. Again, maybe feeling that your breathing naturally harmonizes with the movement. If it doesn't, that shouldn't be forced. And even if it does, you may find that there are moments when perhaps you take a longer breath, or a shorter breath, or an extra breath. This time, sinking down, turning your fingers out, and as you push up, your arms are pushed away from your body. This is the exercise of the wild goose. So again, we have potentially an image here that we can use of the bird in flight. The way that we use imagery is very distinctive in Tai Chi. It can be a very attractive aspect of the art. But you shouldn't feel that somehow you failed if you don't respond to an image. And then changing, letting your hands cross in front of your belly. This is parting the clouds. So the imagery is there to serve the movements. There are times when it might be appropriate to investigate an image, but ultimately it's done in order to bring back certain qualities into our movements, into our body, mind. So don't let the imagery distract you. One more time. What we're going to do now is go back to the first of these exercises. So curling your hand under, we're doing this as a little sequence. Rooting down. At the end of the movement, take your time changing to the wild goose. And then parting the clouds. Just trying to get a sense for the changes from one movement to another, changes in physical experience of the movement, changes in mind and awareness and intention. And also aware of what is common from one movement to another, the expansion and contraction of the movement underpinning all the other movements, that flow of energy. You'll probably become aware of parts of your body where there's maybe a sense of blockage, tightness, non-responsiveness. We may find that by bringing an intention to release, to move more freely in those areas, we can bring about a release. Sometimes we might have to think about how we're doing the movement, our posture, are we straining somewhere? Sometimes we just have to be a little bit patient and let the movement itself have time to work. One more round. This time, let your hands drop down to your sides. Feel the weight of your arms on your shoulders. Bringing your awareness, your intention to one side. So you're working with the expanding movement, pushing your arm up. Wind your arm around, pull down. Let your arm come all the way down. Open your fingers, feel the weight of your arm, and then proceed to the other side. This is Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. Noticing if there's an urge to rush. This is one of the great variables, I think, in these arts. If you've had a busy weekend or if you've got a busy week ahead of you, you may find it more difficult to get that sense of stillness, of calmness. One of the ways we can begin to work with that is to just be more aware of details. Noticing the subtle expansion and contractions through the side of your body, feeling the sensation of movement in your shoulder. Noticing the weight of your arm, noticing that pull down through your hips, that sense of connection to the ground. So that that lively awareness is actually redirected once again into that inner landscape of the body. We find that what happens as we do that is that those other details, those other aspects that may be sort of crowding in on us, gradually take a back seat for a while. One more on each side. Now, as your arms hang down, come up to a slightly higher posture, but still we want to feel, remember, as I said before, this sense of a pull down, particularly through lower back and hips, so that we're still aware of that downward movement and we're still able to allow that downward movement to happen without restriction. And of course, we still feel the upward movement. So this inner dynamic is one of the principal qualities that we work with in Tai Chi. We could call it an energy or a movement or a momentum, whatever suits us best. There's many forms of movement of energy within our bodies, but this is one of the key ones that we're going to be constantly working with, because we're constantly subject to the pull of gravity. Bringing your hands to your sides, lightly touch the side of your body. Again, aware of the weight of your arms. And then lengthening gently through your back, hips dropping down, like somebody massaging your back, pushing your arms up towards the ceiling, and then slowly down, returning to that original position, lightly touching your sides, aware of the weight of your arms. Push out, turn just a little bit, and coming back. Turning the other way, not over, moving, and back. And then facing forwards and pushing out. This is called pushing in four directions. And it's an exercise that is really good for drawing our attention to the central part of our body, pelvis, hips, waist, which becomes an important point of focus. When we return and we lightly touch the sides of the hips, we get that feeling of dropping towards the ground, of rooting down. When we push out and we turn in that central part of the body, it directs the arms in a particular direction. When we turn the other way, the arms move differently. When we feel those patterns of expansion and contraction, it can sometimes feel as though the center of that process is, again, that central part of the body. And because it's the central part of the body that we begin to feel is dropping towards the ground, rooting down, it becomes the part of the body that we learn to bring our attention back to bring our thoughts back to, just to re-establish for a moment that sense of the quietness, the stillness. Recognize that in these movements, we're not simply training muscle, tendon, ligament. We're also training mind and awareness, and we're also training the nervous system. So gradually things like rooting down become more of a habit for us, more hardwired in the body. And the ability to just touch that sense of stillness improves. And I think this is one of the big benefits, one of the big takeaways of our practice, that we're able to increasingly develop what in Tai Chi is poetically referred to as the stillness within the movement. Again, we can bring in images like moving through water. That can give a greater sense of flow to the movement. It can also help us to develop a sense of a slightly stronger, more resilient movement. So pushing in 4 directions. Once again, this time though, letting your hands drop down and again focusing on one side. Let movement, the expansion, push your arm out so it swings around and up, and then slowly down. Give yourself a moment to feel the weight of your arm once again, and then repeat the movement, gently drawing your fingers back. So you're just standing beneath a stone archway like you might find in the entrance to an old church, and you're just sliding your hand around the inside of that arch. So there's a slight press outwards with this. And then, once again, you can turn. So again, we can recognize what's happening in the center of the body. There's an expansion outwards, a turn in, contraction inwards. Change sides to see if there's any difference between one side of your body and another. Add in the turn. Now, again, letting your arms just hang down. Once again, going back to this movement, hips sinking down, so that sense of your center dropping down towards the ground and then being pushed up. As we do this, just be aware of these very subtle changes in the alignment of your pelvis. Pelvis adjusts to keep us upright and stable. Make sure that you're not interfering with that process, either by trying to make it happen or just probably quite habitually doing things that prevent it from happening. So for instance, if I am pulling my belly in tight and I do this, I'm going to instantly be pulled backwards because the pelvis is locked in position. So most of what we do is in this upright stance, feeling that rising and falling of the movement of the energy, expanding through the body and draining away again. But what we're going to do now is change what's happening again in the centre of the body. Do this very gently, very carefully. I'm going to do it quite big, so hopefully you can see the mechanics. Pushing your hips back so the pelvis tilts, and that tilts the whole of your upper body. I'm not bending my back here. I'm not doing this. I'm trying to keep my back as straight as possible without straining. Then let gravity pull your hips down, bringing you back to the upright position and pushing up. Again, like a sailor, using the wind to move the boat. We use the pull of gravity on our hips to help us to come to the upright position. It's still a strong exercise. It can be strong on our knees and strong on our back. So please go carefully with this. We're going to use this action in 2 movements. First, as you come up, you push up and your arms come out. So now, as you sink down and your hips go back, your arms are swung over. This is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Again, this is not about big movements. Notice as your hips go back, your arms go forwards, there's a pull in your back and your spine and your shoulders. We don't want that pull to become hard, to become tight. One more round. And this time, as you come back up, hands flat, front of your belly, turn. Then push your hips back, so again your hands go forwards. Swing your hips across carefully, let them drop down. This is called polishing the table. Again, feeling how the movement in the centre of your body changes everything. It will guide your hands, it will affect the alignment of your body, and if we use it properly, it will also affect how we come to the upright position. From the back, so you can see my hips again, this is exaggerated, so please go carefully. I turn, my hips are pushed back, I swing my hips across, I let them tuck under, I turn back to the front. Same thing on the other side, turning, pushing the hips back, swinging across, up and back. Polishing the table. One more time. And stand. So increasingly, we become more centered in our movements, more centrally aware of what's happening in our bodies and in the interaction that our bodies have with the environment around us, more grounded, more rooted. These are not metaphorical terms in Tai Chi. These are things that we feel through our body. From the parallel stance, imagine parallel lines going across the room. Turn one foot out, step forward with the other foot. Notice you can still see the background between my legs. Front foot is pointing forwards, back foot at a comfortable angle. And once again, just beginning to transfer our weight. Now I said at the beginning of the class when we did this more quickly, that we could start off feeling that there's a sense of a push. But remember that feeling that when we sink down, when we release, when we allow gravity to pull through our hips, or we stop fighting against gravity, we load the legs. We increase the sense of being compressed in the legs. This may mean that our knees bend a little bit more, but not necessarily. It could very much be an internal feeling. So we don't have to bend the knees. You need to keep them bent, but we don't have to go right low down. Just try and find a level for your hips that is sustainable. But be aware of this loading and releasing, compressing and releasing in your legs. So each time your weight lands in one leg, there's a moment of settling, and then you feel that push and you direct that push into the other leg. So again, we have that dynamic quality between hips and ground, providing the movement, the energy, which we then begin to direct. We could imagine this, for instance, coming up from the back foot, being directed through the center of the body and down through the front foot, and vice versa. So again, the center of the body, the physical center of our bodies, is vital to this process. And we're not really getting that much of our weight movement at this point. Getting perhaps 60% of our weight into our front leg in the forward stage, maybe as much as 70 in the back. But now what we do is you go forwards, you push your back knee in, and there's a slight shift. And then go into your back foot, you raise your toes, and there's a slight shift. So gradually, you can have your front foot turned out here, by the way. Sometimes that helps, but not too far. It's just a small turn. It's not right out there. Gradually feeling that your body becomes more supported over one leg. You can root down and align yourself over that leg. And that's when we have the stability, and you can bring your back foot in, push back, put the ball of your foot down, make sure you step hip width, lower your heel, gently push the foot into the floor, make that contact with the ground, go back. When you step with the front foot, you swing it out a little bit, put the heel, lower the ball of the foot, plant the foot it's called, and go forwards. So the step that we're looking for is hip width and about the same in length, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not a huge stride. and then on the other side. So when when the foot is turned out, it opens our hips and can allow the weight to go in a little bit more freely. But the front foot at the moment is turned forwards. That's why we only get about 60% of the weight in this leg. We get a little bit more in the back leg. This transfer of the weight is one of the most important expressions of that inner dynamic. Expansion and contraction is the driving force for many of the movements. It's important that we don't let the knees lock, straighten at any point. For instance, if I go forwards into this leg and my back knee locks, look how it's now pushing me forwards. So soften your knees, releasing in your hips, that slight sense of dropping. As I said, it doesn't have to be a very deep posture, although if your legs are conditioned enough to do that, then by all means do that. Just be careful of your knees, but we should never let the knees straight. Begin to just again raise your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And feeling that pull of gravity on your hips, allowing that to happen so that your center of gravity drops down, and then taking some steps through, either forwards or backwards, depends on where you have the room. I'm going to change direction. Good, and shake out. Have your right foot forward. So now we bring the upper body back into the movement. So that movement, that energy, actually begins to move our arms forwards. Start with your weight back, hands down by your sides again. Aware the weight of your arms. Move your weight forwards, and then as you settle into the front foot, let your arms swing through. Move your weight back as you settle into the back foot, let your arms swing through. This is fisherman casting it. Lovely sort of wave-like flow of movement through your body with this one. And again, as you become more familiar with this movement, noticing the changes in your upper body, places where as your arms move from one position to another, you feel qualities of expansion, contraction, pathways of movement. Bringing a stronger sense of intentionality to those subtle changes within the body is one of the important ways that we begin to bring up an influence over our movement. This is not mind over matter, but as I said earlier, these are intentional movements, and we can begin to work with this combination of body, mind and movement to improve the qualities of all three. Going into your front foot, let your arms swing through, and as they do, turn. And again, that redirects the arms. As you go back, let your hands drop down, sink into the back foot and turn. This is called Wind Blows the Willows. Going forwards, body contracting, expanding, contracting, expanding. This is a lovely movement that contains really everything that is important in how Tai Chi builds movement. We're told that the movement is rooted in our feet. Looked at that sense of the weight dropping, the resilience of the legs. Transmitted through our legs, obviously, because something has to connect the root to the rest of the body. Guided, directed through the centre of the body, and then expressed in our upper body and arms, those patterns of expansion and contraction. So not leading with the arms, keeping a sense of connection to the ground, of being rooted and being grounded, is the start of a sequence of movement that leads us to this lovely sense of flow in our upper body. The image of the willow tree is a common one in these arts. The willow tree is said to sometimes demonstrate the value of these practices, in the sense that the willow trees have very deep roots and very supple wood. So when the wind blows, the willow tree will bend and then return where other trees might get blown over. And again, this is something that is looked for in the martial side of Tai Chi, but I think has great significance for us in our daily lives. The winds of life will blow us around somewhat, and we develop this sense of suppleness towards it, of resilience towards it through these practices. So let's do those on the other side. Left foot forwards now, starting with Wind Blows the Willows, feeling how that compression and release, the sense of the rising movement from the ground, moves into your upper body, and moves your arms for you. We can bring in images like moving through water. Again, that can help build that sense of inner resilience. And then turning into Wind Blows the Willows. Don't strain in your back or your shoulders again. Think of the movement upwards through your body, pushing your arms away from your body rather than trying to lift your arms. It's important not to strain in the upper part of your body, because that would tend to cut us off from the root, from the ground, make us less stable. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to combine this exercise with the stepping that we did earlier. I'm going to go forwards, but again, if we have more space going back, that's fine. Notice that I've turned my front foot out again. As I turn, I push my back knee in, step through. Planting the foot. This is called dragonfly skims the water. Pause in just a moment to feel the posture, in particular your hips dropping back before you take the step. And then, if it's comfortable for you, raise in the leg, trying not to stiffen up in your hips as you do so. Keeping that feeling of your root, your stability, not straining in your back, your shoulders, your arms, moving from the ground. Dragonfly skims the water. I'm going to have to change direction before I bump into the camera. And then just bring your feet parallel. Give your legs a shake. Okay, so the combination of all these different qualities, the root, the alignment, the calmness of the mind, and the sense of a smooth, uninhibited movement within the body, are sometimes grouped together, and one of the ways that one of the terms used to describe them is central equilibrium. The Chinese term is zhongding. And one of the images of central equilibrium is the mountain. The mountain carries with it that sense of stillness, but it's also a very dynamic quality. The mountain reaches up, but is also obviously very solid on the ground, and so on and so forth. It's very, very easy to lose these qualities. To stumble, to feel, if there's a bump in the pavement, we can feel as though we're going to fall over. If we've got a busy time, or we're feeling a bit stressed, it's easy to lose that quietness, that stillness. As I said, all of these things are processes. And this last exercise, the process is one of returning. It's called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. So come back to your parallel stance, sinking down, and then gently pushing up, feeling the body expand, hips dropping back, hands coming around as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest, and then just drawing in. Turn your hands palm down, let your hips drop, and your arms follow, coming back to the mountain. Nice and easy and gently. And take a few moments just to notice how you come back, what brings you back. Because I think this is one of the great takeaways from the art, this ability to re-establish our root, our centre, that sense of stillness, our stability, as we go through our daily lives. So what would be most useful for you to recall later in the day? Embrace Tiger, return to mountain. This time, just letting your hands drop down. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths to finish. Thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. Please note that next week, Monday, is Easter Monday. There won't be a class on that day, so we'll be back on the Monday class in 2 weeks' time, but there will be a class on Thursday. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye for now.